Hello, I'm Greg Cangelosi, and I'm the chairman and co-founder of Betamore, and also the managing partner of Olive Ventures. And it's my true pleasure to welcome you to our next live session of Founder City. Today's a special session for us, with a special guest and an incredible story of entrepreneurship. Before we get into it, I wanted to remind the startup community to submit your company to our pitch competition on our partner Fundraising's platform. If you're affiliated with an incubator in the state of Maryland, make sure you get your discount code. There's still plenty of time to submit for the pitch. All details can be found at foundercity.com. Today's session is brought to you by Johns Hopkins Tech Ventures, the Chesapeake Digital Health Exchange, and Olive. And it's a special one as mentioned. Today, our good friend Mark Komisky, who serves as the program director for the CDHX, the Chesapeake Digital Health Exchange, which is a 3-year program funded by the U.S. Department of Commerce to advance the digital health ecosystem here in the region. We'll be interviewing my fearless leader, who's also a co-founder of Betamore and is currently the CEO of Olive, Mr. Sean Lane. They will be covering Sean's journey from building Olive from zero to over $1 billion in valuation. For this session, before I turn it over to Mark and Sean, there are a couple of asides that most people don't know about, a couple stories I want to tell. First, I was just recently reminded by Sean that Founders City was actually one of the original names for consideration for Betamore. Sean reminded me of that and also just pulled out one of the original logos that he designed for it in 2012. Secondly, another story most people don't know is that in 2013, right after we opened the first Betamore located at 1111 Light Street, Sean, about 30 days after, said to me, "Greg, I'm going to go move to Columbus, Ohio to start a healthcare technology company." Of course, I was like, "What, Sean? We just built out Betamore. I mean, we got to get this going." Sean turned around to me and said one thing. He goes, "Greg, I'll make you a promise. I'm going to go build a $1 billion healthcare technology company, and then we'll come back and do a venture together." So when I was on the all-staff meeting back in last fall, when Sean announced our recent funding raise was putting us at a $1.5 billion valuation, I think I literally choked up because execution, vision, tenacity, resilience, an incredible journey. I'm so excited that he's going to be sharing it with the audience today. So Sean, thank you. Mark, thank you. We'll turn it over to you guys to have a great conversation.
Thanks, Greg. Great to be here today. CDHX, as you said, is a 3-year effort. We're working on connecting entrepreneurs, payers, providers, investors, strategic partners, and customers all around digital health. But we're also paving the way for the next generation of digital health entrepreneurs through inclusion and workforce development, including diversity and inclusion training as well as part of our efforts. And now let's welcome Sean Lane. Great to see you again, Sean. And on behalf of Founders City, CDHX, Johns Hopkins, and all our sponsors, thanks for being with us today.
Great to see you too, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here.
In honor of you, Sean, I actually wore my deep purple today, just in your honor. So
awesome. Great choice.
So first, Sean, tell us a little bit about your background. Like, how did you get here?
Well, I mean, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a spy. So I grew up reading, books about Soviet weapon systems and different military strategies. I got into military intelligence after undergrad. I went to Miami, Ohio, grew up in Ohio. And as soon as I became an intelligence officer, one of my first duty assignments was at Fort Meade. So I worked at NSA most of my career. That's what brought me to the Baltimore area. I spent 10 years in Baltimore, but really pursuing that intelligence career. And even when I got out of NSA, my first company was in military intelligence. Started right there in Baltimore.
That's great. And is there anything specific from your military training that really sort of brought you to this moment and really sort of maybe fueled a part of Olive?
Absolutely. So I actually think that, much of my time in intelligence has shaped, things that I do every single day right now from a technology perspective. It was actually at NSA when I started to build this kind of internet of intelligence, taking data and sharing it from different systems, dealing with like the biggest big data problems in the world. and it's still what I'm doing now in healthcare. Effectively creating these knowledge graphs, being able to connect systems together that were never connected before, create insights and wisdom and knowledge within these networks. So very, very similar actually. And not to mention a lot of the leadership training that occurs in the military as well. I've used both of those.
I know in my previous life, I worked in cybersecurity companies. I started a couple of companies along the way. My experience was the intelligence guys never got along. The Fort guys didn't like the Langley guys. In fact, sometimes they would intentionally do the opposite thing of what the other one did, which I'm sure created all sorts of headaches for. And forget the DISA guys. That's a whole other category altogether. But talk a little bit about kind of your experience in those sort of disparate systems and entrenched players, and like how does that influence all this?
Well, it does in a very big way. The thing that really changed that was 9/11. So after 9/11 happened, the fortresses really eroded and went down. The guard went down on all these different silos. I mean, there are, I think, 13, I can't remember all of them off the top of my head, intelligence community members. And to a large degree, there were, 13 intranets. We may have data at NSA about a bad guy, and CIA has their data about a bad guy, and FBI and DIA and DEA and NGA, name it. But when it's really the powers when that data comes together. And we did that after 9/11. We started to fuse the data together. We started to share on unprecedented levels. And we showed pretty clearly that when the data are connected, it can be a game changer. And, healthcare is kind of, at least when I started in 2012 into healthcare, it was in the kind of pre 9/11 days of its own industry, where there's a lot of silos, fiefdoms. There wasn't a lot of sharing. And then, over the course of several years, we've been knocking down those walls, and we've created, this internet. We've started sharing data. And then frankly, the pandemic that we're still in, that has really rocked our world over the last, 14 months now, has been a kind of prolonged 9/11 type style of an event, where now I think organizations are, a lot more keen to share data, for the greater good of healthcare, to be able to share data about, capacity around rooms and ER beds and ventilators, but also, surveillance data on some of these epidemiology studies that are done, pulling data together to quickly run clinical trials, to create cohorts for clinical trials, so that drugs can be built quickly and more economically. So I think that we're just getting started as it pertains to sharing in healthcare, but we've really been catalyzed over the last 14 months.
Talk a little bit more about where the idea for Olive came from. I mean, you said you started messing around with this in 2012, but how did you get from there to here, or from military intelligence to there? So
I was in Baltimore. I had just recently partnered with Greg, as he mentioned, and we were just so invested in the ecosystem, the entrepreneurial ecosystem in Baltimore, still are. And, it was my plan to be there forever. I think ironically, maybe a week before I started to get a kind of instinct that I was not going to be there forever. I had an article. There was an article published. It was like Sean Lane's all in on Baltimore, which was kind of ironic. But so what happened was, my hometown back in southeastern Ohio was battling a ferocious battle with prescription drug abuse, and it was ravaging my hometown where I grew up, and lots of my friends were affected by it, and my family was affected by it, very close members of my family. And that was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. And I was fed up with this prescription drug abuse problem, and I wanted to know more, and I wanted to see if there was a way to help. And a few leaders from my hometown came to Baltimore actually and asked if I could help. So I started visiting my hometown and specifically the hospital, to learn more about what's going on. Like, why are people able to access these opioids? And the answer in a lot of ways was that the health care system they had no idea that it was happening. They just weren't sharing data. Their systems weren't connected together. And they didn't know who a person was. And you experience that every day, or every time you go to a hospital and you fill out the same forms over and over and over again, you're reintroducing yourself to healthcare because they don't know who you are. So the instincts for the company started then, and it was what I said at that point back in 2012 was, we're going to build the internet of healthcare, the IOH. And frankly, for 4 years, nobody had any clue what I was talking about. But it was, to me, we had done it already in the intelligence community. So I kind of knew what to do. I started by building a graph database, me and my team, putting together, a thing that we could do entity resolution on people, places, and things, and started to connect, create like a routing table of where someone's data were. But even that was a nice idea, but it wasn't, commercial. We couldn't commercialize it. There was no way to make money. So for the first, several years of the business, we, had fits and starts of making money, zigged and zagged on 20 plus products. But it was really when I was visiting hundreds of hospitals, giving them this graph for free, this identity graph, as a way to kind of start a relationship with them. When I saw that every time I would go to these hospitals, they had seas of people in cubicles, and they would have hundreds of people that were effectively doing the same thing over and over and over again. And they were the routers of healthcare's kind of current internet. They were logging into one system, taking data out, logging into another, putting data in. They were basically the APIs of healthcare. They were the ETL. They were the routers. Pick your analogy. But I was like, that's the problem. The problem is that we have 16 million employees in healthcare. 4 million of them are routers that cost $1 trillion. And then it became very clear that what we needed to do was actually build a new workforce, an AI workforce, and an AI workforce that could sit virtually in that seat, could connect into any system through the user interface, just like a human would, and take on these tasks that these humans were currently doing, and free up the human to, just like we have in many industries, in the past, to do things that were made for them, not being a router. And that became clear that that's what we should build. And that was the 28th product that we built. And that was called Olive. And that's kind of how it got started.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's a big jump from tracking patients and opioid prescriptions all the way out to hospital information systems. Yeah. That's a huge jump. Is there a common thread through all of that?
Oh, for sure. I mean, the common thread is the internet of healthcare. The common thread is connecting systems together that weren't made to be connected. They're certainly meant to be connected, but not made to be connected.
Yeah.
The thread is the internet of healthcare, and it stayed that way from the very, very beginning. The instincts of things aren't connected is still the thing that drives us. We're, as a company, we still talk about the IOH, and we're going to talk about it more, as we continue to grow, and we're going to, kind of show people what we think the IOH could be. So that's been the thread the whole time. It was a very long and winding mind maze to get from the healthcare doesn't have the internet to we're going to build an AI workforce as the solve for that. It certainly wasn't obvious. It took us, lots of twists and turns to figure that out. But when it clicked, it was obvious. And then when we built it and we asked hospitals if they would hire Olive, they said yes almost every single time. And it was clear that we had product market fit at that point. And, Olive was flying off the shelves and the unit economics were great. So we just kind of plowed into it and stopped doing everything else.
We'll get to customers in a second, but I was a healthcare analyst 20 some odd years ago, and then I sort of went off and did cybersecurity stuff for a while, and now I'm back. One of my questions is why healthcare? I mean, healthcare, in many ways, healthcare hasn't changed a whole lot in 20 years. We might have moved from flat files to relational databases, but from a technology perspective, it's awful. It's an archaic technology and data infrastructure. You've got lots of entrenched tech players. I would say, some people would say Judy Faulkner has done more to keep healthcare data systems in the dark ages than just about anybody else on the planet. You've got regulations, you've got customers who are generally averse to tech innovations or anything like that. You got patchworks of players and providers and all that kind of stuff, a disconnect certainly between the clinical activity and paying for the clinical activity. And then you just mentioned a second ago, there are a ton of the Marks and Marshes and middle management out there that are the glue that make it all work. But most of the knowledge sits in their head. I mean, it's not anywhere embodied in a system. So, I mean, this is a big jump from opioid addiction to like taking on the healthcare system. I mean, this is a big one. I mean, if you were going to pick an industry, this is one of the harder ones to pick.
Yeah. And I mean, all the things that you just mentioned are the reasons why we're doing what we're doing. And I, everything that you said, I have, a feeling about, and, a point of view. And also, I think that we'll start with this and say that, like, from this point forward, healthcare is going to be where people go to see the new technologies. From this point forward, healthcare will lead like the other industries. There won't be healthcare getting the seconds of financial services or any other industry. Healthcare is the number one employer in this country, 16 million employees. It's more than, retail or consumer or CPG or any other or resorts and vacation and travel. It's an incredibly vibrant 18% of US GDP, $3.6 trillion of spend per year. There's only 12 trillion of spend globally. So United States has a clear 25% of all that spend. So there's a huge, vastly important opportunity for us to really go into healthcare and change it. If you look at any other industry, you think about like travel, and what tech company, multi-billion-dollar tech company has changed travel? Well, Airbnb has changed travel. Tesla's changed travel. Uber has changed travel. Lyft has changed travel. These are billion or trillion dollar enterprises. Think about shopping, Amazon. Think about music, Apple. Think about entertainment, Netflix or Apple. And it's just amazing that pretty much every single industry that you can name, there's a massive tech company that is behind its R&D, but not healthcare. If I say who has changed healthcare, who has innovated in healthcare and made that industry, have an internet-like experience, there's no answer. It's just crickets. And it's definitely not Epic. And look, Epic was, did great things by digitizing a lot of the data of healthcare. But there needs to be a company or several companies with billion-dollar R&D budgets that are going to go in and really fundamentally change the experience that patients get when they interact with healthcare. And I think that opportunity is massive. It's exciting, and it's life or death. I mean, this isn't the same as, social media. This is people. These are people's lives. These are issues with, a rare disease that gets diagnosed to someone who is close to you, who's 30 years old, with their whole life ahead of them, and they rely on the healthcare system to figure out how to work with that rare disease. And to think that healthcare system doesn't have the opportunity to benefit from a multi-billion-dollar R&D budget when you have your family's life or your friend's life depending on it. It's time. It's definitely time.
What do you think has been the biggest obstacle to somebody disrupting the healthcare market?
Well, I think that it's been very difficult to build a massive company inside healthcare. there are so many headwinds. All those things that you rattled off are the reasons that we exist, but they're also the reasons that many startups have not been able to achieve the kind of scale that's required to make that broad of an impact. A lot of companies fail to get out of pilot mode, when they're starting, and it's a really difficult kind of scenario where you have 200 of the nation's largest health systems out there that do $1 billion of revenue or more. They're kind of the gatekeepers for a lot of this technology. And if you can't get out of the pilot mode with those gatekeepers, then you're not going to have much opportunity to succeed. And there's also even if you did get to that point and you start to scale your company and you find product market fit and you're in rarefied air at that point, you get the venture capital backing that you may need to scale. There's like a valley of acquisition that is kind of occurs like crazy in healthcare between, call it 100 million of enterprise value and $1 billion of enterprise value. And most companies just don't come out the other side. They end up getting acquired. It's a great outcome. People are happy. But what it doesn't do is create, that massive scale company that can really, make that change. So I think that's what has kept us from doing it. And just because we need to have the balance sheets to support true innovation. We need to have companies that think about themselves as tech companies, that truly think about, building R&D budgets that take on very big challenges. And I haven't seen it just doesn't happen very often in healthcare. I think it hasn't happened yet.
No, and I think it's interesting that, in some ways there was the opioid crisis, obviously. Now we have the pandemic. There's two gigantic healthcare, experiences or things that have happened. One somewhat self-inflicted. I mean, obviously, I think opioid was an issue of people fell through the system. They got multiple prescriptions and so forth. Obviously, the pandemic, nature just came and smashed into us, but we've had to respond to that. Talk a little bit about kind of, how could tech help us in the future? I mean, obviously, there's 1,000 lessons here, but and it's going to happen again. There's going to be another one of these, whatever it is. But talk a little bit about how technology could help us.
Yeah, it's really exciting when you can kind of imagine a future of what I would say is inevitable of how you will interact with healthcare. At the very beginning of your experience with healthcare, you take a lot of comfort in knowing that they know who you are. One of the interesting things that these internet, I know it sounds basic, but
they don't always know who you are. They think they know who you are.
Right. Well, and as a patient, you just don't get any comfort right now in healthcare that they know who you are. You walk in the door, they have no idea who you are. Again, you're filling out the same basic forms over and over and over again. You have really no confidence that they're looking through your history. They're like, oh, I read this thing from 5 years ago. You're telling them things. Is it actually going into your record? You're collecting data. Maybe you got your genome mapped or your WES, like whole exome sequenced. Maybe you have quantified self data from fitness wearables or metabolomics or even glucometer data, and you're not sure that they've ever seen it or ever will. And I think that comfort needs to exist. There needs to be, when I buy something on Amazon, I know they know who I am. I know for a fact they know who I am. And I know that so does Facebook, and so does Uber, and so does Lyft. And the memory that this connectivity gives you as a company is what drives the experience that we expect. And we don't get that experience in healthcare, so it doesn't give us confidence. So at the onset, I think that's important. You've got to create an experience that people value and one that they're used to getting. So that's like number one. That's a very you kind of front door piece of it. On the deeper tech side of things, let's talk about like medicine and drugs. Right now, drug development is extraordinarily expensive. To put together the kind of data that you need in order to identify a cohort of people who are candidates for testing a drug is excruciatingly hard. There have been plenty of technology that have tried to make it better, tried to make it easier, but the reality is that the data aren't organized, connected, or liquid by any means. And technology can change that. Technology can drive down the cost of drug development. It can increase the access to these cohorts of people for clinical trials. To have access to a clinical trial that may give you 2 more months of life it's right there. I mean, they exist, but people aren't connected to them because they don't know they exist, or the doctor treating you doesn't know it exists. But they could have given you 2 months to go to see your kid graduate. And the fact that that's true is something that it's awful that it exists that way, but we can change it. We can make it so that these cohorts are easily identifiable because the data is connected, and clinical trial costs can go down. That means more drugs will be developed. So not just drugs for, type 1 diabetes, but very specific drugs that may only apply to a population of 10,000 people. But because it was cheaper to make, you can scale down to those numbers. You can create personalized medicine. And that changes life expectancy. I mean, that's a big, big deal. That's one example. There's one thing that you mentioned earlier. You said I think the words you used were like Mark and Marsha or
of middle management.
Yeah. So here's another kind of thing that is inevitably going to happen in healthcare. You're absolutely right that the wisdom and institutional knowledge of healthcare is in the brains of humans for the most part. It's sitting in the brains of the human. That's right. It's walking in and out of the door. It's leaving jobs. It's retiring. It's going from one health system to another. And the people that work at that health system, that's where that data, that corporate knowledge lives. So how to run processes, how to get paid by payers, how to what things are available to them and their revenue cycle or their supply chain system, or you name it, any of those administrative, their clinical operations, even how to treat a rare disease. So what Netflix did for data, think about what they did. They said, there's all this great content out there, but it's not aggregated. You can't access it. You can't browse it. You have to literally they were you had to go to a store and pull that content off a shelf, take it home and plug it into a machine to watch it. That's what content was before Netflix. Now Netflix then went and grabbed up all that, aggregated it, made it viewable and sortable, and even knew who you were so they could recommend the right data. That's what needs to happen with the data, with the information that's in Mark and Marsha's head, as everybody should have ubiquitous access, democratized access to the administrative know-how of how to run an operating room or rev cycle or supply chain. And that content aggregation and dissemination, while those words may not be sexy, they will change everything. So those are some examples.
Yeah, I think you're here at a really interesting moment too. I mean, this whole COVID pandemic, for all the horrors it's done, it really has made telemedicine explode. And it really has opened up all these questions about remote patient monitoring. This whole notion in our healthcare system that a clinical event is when I go to the doctor and I'm in a building and they see me. That's like the event. And that's the only time they collect data is a little bit crazy. And so this notion that I could now have data outside a clinical setting, and that data could be incorporated with other data, and that you could see me and I wouldn't have to get up and drive across town and sit in a waiting room and do all those kinds of things. That is all incredibly powerful stuff and is going to keep driving all of this. I mean, some of the major health systems, I think, are continuing to say that even after the pandemic, they fully expect that 20 to 25% of their revenues will continue to come through telemedicine visits. And so I think that's just absolutely huge. And so redefining that whole user experience, just like Uber did. Uber, changed transportation, but fundamentally what they did was they changed the user experience in a fundamental way. And I think that's one of the opportunities you have before you, which is really super exciting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, with this virtual medicine, before the pandemic and still the case, but changing, is that medicine's very macro. Like you go and you experience it. It's usually something acute, maybe it's a once a year an appointment, or you have something wrong, so you go to the hospital. They're very acute events. They're low frequency. And what technology does is actually changes access, which makes it high frequency. So if you can go from macro medicine to micromedicine, to nanomedicine, to where I can text a doctor back and forth a couple times a week or a month. That access changes frequency, which changes your experience. And I think we're in the middle of that. We're in the beginning of that, where it's going from macro medicine to nanomedicine. A virtual visit somewhere in the micro medicine kind of domain. But the your frequency when you have access will change. Just like buying, renting DVDs. Maybe you rented a DVD once a month. You went to Blockbuster with your family and you rented a DVD. But now with Netflix, you might watch it every single night. And your access changed, therefore your frequency changed. And when medicine becomes high frequency and it becomes about health and not sickness, it becomes about a prolonged, sustained relationship with someone who's actively helping you be healthy. That's when life expectancy changes.
No, that's great. That's fantastic. Let's switch a little bit. Talk about your customers. I think you guys are over 700 now or something like that. What did it take to convince so many, because this is a risk-averse audience. They do not adopt new technology fast. What did you do to convince so many to take the plunge so quickly?
Well, so I would first kind of challenge that assumption that they're risk averse. I came into healthcare thinking that. I'd been told that. Frankly, our customers are excited about technology and are innovators. True innovators. Like there are a few who are resistant, but it's just like any market, really. I mean, it's not that unique. You have your early adopters and your innovators, just like you do with any other market. You just have to read Crossing the Chasm, and it's the same applies in healthcare, right? You have your early adopters and your innovators. You find them, you work with them. You bring your product into the market that way. You then kind of get to the early minority. Now, the early minority of the buyers are the more conservative buyers. They're going to look at the use cases that you developed with the early adopters and the innovators. They're going to look at the proof points. They're going to look at the results. They're the ones who are going to make the reference calls. They're the ones who are going to say, show me what you did already for others. But you just have to build to that, just like you would any other company and any other enterprise. But you got to find those early adopters. You got to find those innovators. And then you got to kind of cross that chasm into your early adopters with proof points. We were just able to do that. We were able to cross the chasm. We have over 700 hospitals. We now are working with both payers and providers. So not just providers, not just your health systems, but also now insurance companies. So we're kind of growing our market. But yeah, I oftentimes think about the trope that healthcare is not innovative. But when I go and talk to these leaders, these executives, the C-suites of these health systems, they really are. That is changing. It's changing rapidly. They're expected to innovate. They make good salaries and they want to keep it, and they want to make sure that they're innovating. They want to make sure that they're driving change. And a lot of them are physicians, in these executive positions. They've grown up taking care of people. They've grown up being on the front lines of healthcare, and they're certainly passionate about it. And they have a desire for things to get better and change. So I've just been really happy with our relationship as a company, with the executive teams at our customer sites. And it really has gone against the grain of what I expected.
Talk a little bit more about what was your pitch to your early customers?
Yeah, so we basically in the beginning we said, look, we have an AI worker, and her name is Olive. And they said, whoa, it's a she? It's like, yes. And we explained that we want this to be another employee of yours. Your workforce is going to be your human workforce and your AI workforce. It's no longer just going to be your human workforce. You're going to hire these AI workers. They're going to come in and they're going to do various tasks for you. And we'll do it, more efficiently, more economically, and they'll get smarter at scale, because every single time a customer like you signs up, the system gets smarter and you benefit from it. So if you're customer one, when customer two signs up, you benefit. When customer three signs up, you benefit. all the way to customer 700. So the cool thing about, and so that was the pitch. Like basically we have an AI worker. Her name is Olive. She's going to come in and she's going to work in your rev cycle. She's going to do it more cost effectively. She's going to free up your humans. So now, and this is a really important point, not only are you doing it at greater value, not only are you able to take on the huge list of work that you never got through because you just didn't have enough manpower. Now you actually get to increase the ROI of your human workers. So your human workers no longer, logging in and checking the same thing, 4,700 times a week. They are doing innovative things. They're changing processes. They're focusing on customer care, which in their world is treating patients and figuring out how to make it a better process, better engagement, better experience. This is all contributes to a better industry. So that's a really cool thing to be able to do is show them a path to save money and create a better experience for their employees and their customers.
No, and I would think the employee part would be very important because, historically, a lot of the jobs in healthcare bureaucracy were just complete dead ends. So, this really gives people an opportunity to really work with some of the latest technology and do much more innovative things.
That's right. Changes, turnover rates, employee satisfaction, creates mobility. They now have job fairs because a lot of people are being reskilled and retrained and upskilled, which is awesome to see. Internal job fairs after they adopt their AI workforce. Because when Olive comes to work, we work at scale in these enterprises. We're talking, we're not just working in one department on one task. We're working literally on every single department in the hospital, in the health system, or the insurance company. And we're taking on massive workloads. So it changes their workforce. And what it does is it enables them to grow. So when you have like a really high cost structure, and a lot of it is because, you're paying humans to be routers. When you free up that money, now your humans can grow into new areas, new service lines can open, acquisitions can occur. You can open up new places in remote areas, so access to medicine changes. So it's a really net effect, great for healthcare.
Talk a little bit about this concept of assurance and what that means. I met Hemant, I think, almost 20 years ago. He had just started at General Catalyst, and we were looking for investment in my company. So it's totally weird to have my world's completely circle around.
Oh, yeah, totally. Full circle.
Yeah, but talk a little bit about this concept of assurance and how that applies to all this. So
Hemant and Dr. Stephen Klasko wrote a book called Unhealthcare. If you haven't read it, I suggest picking it up. It's a quick read. It's one that you don't really put down because it makes so much sense. And this idea of assurance, there's a lot of spins on what health assurance means, and we have our own. We just said, we want health to be assured. So we want to do what we can to, assure health, not insure a person. It should be more about how do we make sure they're healthy, not how do we, when they're sick, they make a claim, just like if you got hit by a car, you're making a claim to an insurance product. And that's probably not the right way to keep people healthy. So it really challenges that. Now, what we did is we took that very literally, and we said, we're going to create a product that we call Assurance, which we do have. And basically what we did was we got right in the middle of the claims process, because I said, we got to start with the money. If we're going to bring this assurance to life, if we're going to, give it the juice it needs to succeed, we need to start where the money is. So what we do at Olive, and it's called Olive Assures, is we pay claims immediately. So we don't wait for the insurance to pay them. We give our customers the experience of getting paid as soon as they treat a patient. And, so we create a financial product as a result. So assurance that you're going to get paid, which, by the way, for people who may not know in healthcare, it is certainly not assured or insured that you are going to get paid when you submit a claim to an insurance company. Many claims are denied. And there's an entirely expensive arbitrage that goes on between the insurance company and the hospital. Fortunately, we're right in the middle of it, so we know it, we understand it. We've seen it millions of times, so we have a good engine to predict it, and we can actually change the outcome. and get our, and we put our money where our mouth is by paying these claims immediately.
Yeah, this is, long ago we talked about this. I mean, the rules of payment are in the contract. This should not be complicated. I went to law school once upon a time. You should be able to translate that into code that actually allows it to get paid. It seems sort of, again, lack of transparency, a lot of unknowns in the user experience. It really is not a good, not good or fun.
Right. And then the cool unlock to doing that at scale, because it's hard to, this is more traditionally called factor, right? So like it's when you pay a receivable ahead of time. But the reason why these claims aren't factored is because the security is unknown. The claim, is it going to get paid? We have no idea. But the game has changed now because we have deep learning. So we can put 10 million claims into a deep learning model and then we submit one claim and it tells us pretty accurately if that claim is going to get paid. So we know a lot about the security now, and that means we can factor these things, and we can. And if we don't think it has a high likelihood of getting paid, we can go change it. We change it up. We change it with our AI workers. So it's a pretty cool new world that we live in with the ability to understand, not just by putting in the rules, but through a deep learning model, whether or not a claim is going to get paid.
Yeah, and even if you can't get 100%, if you could move the needle on 80-20, this is huge dollars in time we're talking about, just enormous numbers.
Oh, yeah, it's $3.6 trillion.
Unbelievable. Let's pivot a little bit. Tell us a little bit about fundraising. I mean, you've gone from, small fundraising not that many years ago to now gigantic fundraising. Like, what's the story to an investor? I mean, I've raised, tens of millions of dollars, not hundreds of millions of dollars, but whether you're raising $1 million or 400 million, as I think you guys have, the story has to change. It has to grow. It has to be commensurate with the amount of money you're talking about. So tell a little bit about that experience.
It's interesting. Even from the very beginning, we talked about this future that we were going to create, the same things that we're talking about today. And I've kept with that story and I've kept with that vision from the beginning. Frankly, though, it was really hard for early investors to see it, because they had to have a lot of faith that we were going to go from where we were to this big bounding vision. But now it's actually easier for them to see it. We're a bigger company, over 700 employees, a lot of customers, growing extraordinarily fast. And we believe it. We see the vision, and it's actually starting to come into focus, that it's possible. And so that's the first thing I'll say, is that the story hasn't really changed that much. It's actually been pretty consistent. It was just actually harder to see in the early days, but now it's actually a little easier for people to see. But getting like a little bit tactical on fundraising, I had never really raised money prior to Olive. I mean, I think the first thing you need to do, and the title of this talk was like a path from 0 to $1 billion. Well, the first thing you need to do is figure out, are you building a $0 million company or a $0 billion company? And that I stole that from Vinod Khosla, who's one of our investors. But it's very, very important in the early days. Like, are you going to build something that, maybe you'll get to 100 million in market value, or are you building something for $1 billion? Because you build those companies very differently. And you just have to know what that is. I don't think one is better than the other necessarily. I've done both. They're very different. I'm super excited about, I'm glad I picked the $1 billion second, but you just got to figure that out first. And then I got super lucky. I was in Ohio and I was working on this Internet of Healthcare. I had never raised venture capital. And I met a guy named Mark Kwame and a guy named Chris Olson. So Mark and Chris were at Sequoia. Mark was at Sequoia for 12 years. He was the first investor in LinkedIn. His dad built National Semiconductor. He was like as Silicon Valley as you could imagine. And Chris Olson was at Sequoia for 6 years, also an incredible investor. He kind of sourced and invested in Klarna, which, if you're familiar, I think they just hit like they're tens of billions. I don't know if they're public about their valuation, but they're tens of billions. So I had these like great investors that I happened to meet in Ohio. And we started talking, and they realized like, hey, you're not a like, you may have grown up on a farm, but you're not like what we would expect coming from a small town in southeastern Ohio. You're talking a lot about technology, because I was talking to them about technology, and I talked to them about my background at NSA, and they were like, what are you up to now? And I said, well, I want to build the internet of healthcare. And they said, whoa, that sounds big. And they said, you need to don't go build another small company. You need to build a multi-billion-dollar company. You need to change the entire industry. You need to build the internet of healthcare. And they're like, we're going to leave Sequoia. We're going to start a new fund, and you'll be our very first investment. And that's how I raised the Series A. And they said, one catch, you got to move to Columbus, Ohio. And I said, whoa, I'm all in on Baltimore. Like literally said it in the paper 2 days ago. They said, no, you have to move to Ohio, because we're going to prove that you can build multi-billion-dollar companies outside of Silicon Valley. I was like, well, Baltimore's outside of Silicon Valley. But they said that we want to prove that you can do it in the Midwest, because it's like the 8th largest economy in the world, and you gotta do it with us. So I reluctantly made the decision to move, but it was really this idea of moving to the island and burning the boats, doing something really that I'd never even contemplated before, building a massive company, and I couldn't get it out of my head that it was even possible. So it was those venture capitalists that really opened my eyes to this idea that you could build such a big company. So that was like Series A. And then, we ran out of money, and it became time for Series B. And I said, okay, guys, how do I raise money from venture capitalists? Asking our current investors. By the way, the name of their firm is Drive Capital, that they started. So I'm asking the guys at Drive, like, how do we raise money? And they're like, I'll tell you exactly how to do it, but you have to do exactly what I say. And I said, perfect. So they said, you need to, because you live in Ohio, you need to go to Silicon Valley and don't leave for 30 days. Stay every single day there, including the weekends, because you've got to be completely 100% focused, and you don't drag it out. You start on a specific day and you stop at a specific day, and you tell them you're going to sign a term sheet in 30 days. And then your deck needs to look like this. And they told me exactly what to put in the deck. And I put exactly that in the deck. And then it said, we'll make the connections for you. So they connected me to all the big name VCs all up and down Silicon Valley. And I got an Airbnb, and my first time was in Palo Alto. And I went up and down Sand Hill Road, because that was still a thing then, before everybody moved to the city. And I did exactly what they said. And I told everyone that I was going to sign a term sheet in 30 days. And I signed a term sheet on the 30th day, and I got on a plane and I came back to Ohio. I did that I did that for B, I did that for C, D, E, F, G. So every single round I did the exact same thing. Now, the reality is I didn't do it on G or whatever one we're on now, the last three, because they all happened during COVID, and I was sitting, in my behind my camera. But for all the other ones, I deployed. I'm an ex-military guy, so I considered it a deployment, and it worked every single time. 30 days to a term sheet.
That's a great story. That's fantastic, and it's great that you had guides. I always say that it's important to get guides who can sort of help guide you through the important pieces like that. That's fantastic. Talk briefly about sort of what it's been like to scale up. I mean, you've got what now, 3 companies, or you guys just acquired, was it Verata, and you're starting Circulo, and there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of hiring. Talk a little bit about scaling up.
Yeah. It's incredible. It's incredible. It's such when these things go, as somebody told me this a long time ago, he said to me, when these things go, they really go. And I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, it's like, of course, that's like the most obvious statement. But then this year, I'm like, when these things go, they go. Like I know exactly what he means by that. A year ago today, we had about 200 employees. We're about in the 190s. As of today, we're over 700. That was a year ago. So we've added 500 people in 1 year. Now, granted, some of that was through acquisition. We acquired Verata Health, incredible team. We acquired just recently Empiric, which is an incredible team doing very different things. Verata and prior authorizations. very much believing in the Internet of Healthcare alongside us. And then, I call these IOH companies. And then Empiric was doing the exact same thing with data and aggregation around the OR, around the operating room. And so they're an IOH company as well. So the scale, what I've realized, and it took me a while, is that leadership is probably the most important thing. It's the most important muscle to build. It's the most important skill. And frankly, I had a ton to learn. I wasn't even coming out of the military. You think I would be a great leader. And my first company was pretty successful. And everybody, I thought that I was a pretty good leader. But when you're building a company at this scale and you're going through the trials and tribulations of not making really a dollar of revenue for 4 years, it really puts you to the test as a leader. So I've worked on that really hard. Probably the most of anything I've worked on is just being a leader. And I work on it every day. And I've developed my own kind of methodology that I call love to lead. It's basically you have to love in order to lead, and you have to love to lead in order to, because it's a hard job. So it's an acronym actually. So LOVE, and the acronym is everything is a leadership problem. I mean, you have to realize no matter what happens, even if code commits break something, it's a leadership problem. And you have to think of it through that lens and figure out how to change it. Not everything seems tactical. Everything that seems tactical is still a leadership problem. And I try to have everyone think of that way. The O is otherhood. When you grow at the scale that we're at, there are people right now that work at Olive that feel unrecognized, that feel underappreciated, that feel like they don't have the right information, that they don't have time with their manager. They don't feel like they're getting paid enough. They don't feel like we're doing the right things. So I always think about the others who have this otherhood, and constantly I'm thinking about those people, because it used to happen a lot less frequently, but as you grow, I can say with certainty that it's happening right this second. And the idea is like, we got to build systems for those people who feel underappreciated, who feel like we're not doing a good job in a lot of areas. The V is vision. So I love more than almost anything in the world when I have a vision and people help me execute it, and it comes true. It comes to life. Betamore was an example. When Greg and I had that vision, Greg and Mike had that vision, and it came to life, like walking through it for the very first time, that very first day. It's just an incredible feeling. And what I realized, and it took me too long to realize this, but what I realized is that everybody likes that. And why am I selfish and only people, helping me execute my vision? I want to execute everyone's vision. And I want to have a company where everybody asks everybody else, what's your vision? And then they just help them get to that. And so I think vision is really important. And it's about everyone's vision. It's about helping everybody execute everyone's vision. And then the last one is expectations. I think all emotions come from expectations. If you wake up mad about something, frustrated, you have that morning thing. For me, it happens in the morning. I don't know. I'm like a grumpy morning guy. I don't know why. I love mornings, but I get up and I'm mad about something. I'm like, this is supposed to go, this data was supposed to be collected like this. I told people that, like, what the heck is going on? And the reality is I'm mad because I expected something that didn't happen. And I've realized that there's no such thing as too crystal clear on expectations. So I doggedly am trying to communicate expectations and hearing people tell me what their expectations are of me, being really clear about it, and then hoping that people do that inside our organization. So and I say all this because you say, what's it like to scale? And my answer to that is, if you have really principled leadership methodologies, then you can survive, and you have a crystal clear vision and one that's communicated often, then I think you can survive this kind of scale. Because there's no way I'm going to be able to do it alone. And the reality is it's the team that we've built that has enabled us to scale.
That's a good segue. That's fantastic. I think those are all great insights here. Talk a little about, first off, why Baltimore, and what's up with Olive Ventures? I mean, clearly this is a different way of approaching a startup. There's plenty on your plate, but you wanted to do this Olive Ventures thing too.
Sure. I'll start with Olive Ventures. We believe in the Internet of Healthcare. We believe in a new industry. And we just don't think that industry will be built fast enough if we do it by ourselves. Now, could we do it by ourselves? Maybe, over like a long period of time. But unless we actually change life expectancy, I won't be around to see it. So I think it's time is the scarcest resource. It's not money. It's definitely not vision. It's time. And because time is the scarcest resource, we kind of put together this idea that said, what if we opened up our platform, our data, our distribution, our technology, with SDKs and developer kits and a developer economy, and we helped create big, massive companies that carried our IOH vision in ways that could give us scale beyond our current abilities. And that's when Olive Ventures came in to say, let's put money into these companies. Let's build them from scratch, from the ground up. But let's not build, these aren't $0 million companies. These are $0 billion companies. Mm-hmm. We're building massive companies on our fabric that are going to shape, to kind of form that IOH, because we just can't do it all ourselves. So the first one was Circulo. Mm-hmm. Circulo is a Medicaid company. I am very passionate about Medicaid. I believe that the Medicaid product that exists today, what people get, the healthcare that people who are experiencing Medicaid, is a bad product. I think that the taxpayer is paying for a bad product. I want to change that. I think there's too much administrative costs. There's too much overhead. There's too much junk, and we could produce a really incredible experience for a really important part of our population. We see Medicaid as an investment in the future of this country, investing in the people who are going to be the future of this country. It's about the person who may be under 138% of the national poverty level in one day, and they're on Medicaid this week. Could be a founder who's about ready to start a company and it doesn't have a salary and needs to be on Medicaid for a while. That's the future of our country. So I'm super passionate about Medicaid. And we said, if we could have all of data, all of distribution, all of technology, could we build a better insurance company? And our answer was yes, we think we can. And so Circulo is 18 people right now. It's growing. It's exciting. It's we're taking on a huge industry. Yeah. It is not for the faint of heart. There are a lot of people hoping we do not succeed, but there are more that hope we do. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see that play out. But it certainly isn't our last one. We're going to do probably 4 or 5 this year. Wow. We're talking $0 billion companies, massive companies. And I couldn't be more thrilled to have Greg leading that effort. Greg and I have been close for a long time. But he is able to help people see or help people execute their vision. Go back to the love to lead methodology. Greg embodies that. He's a great leader. He helps people execute their visions, and now he gets to do it at scale as Olive grows, which I think is super cool. And then the second question is, why Baltimore? It all started with Baltimore.
It's the Ravens.
Yeah.
It's the Ravens.
There's so many connections, but it all started in Baltimore. Baltimore gave me the opportunity. It was NSA that changed my life. It was Baltimore that changed my life. It was the starting of my first company that changed my life. I met my wife in Baltimore. I, had my second kid in Baltimore. First and second kid in Baltimore. It has given so much to me personally that when it came, time for us to grow big enough to say, where's our second location going to be? It was an obvious choice that we're going right back to Baltimore, where it all started. So I love the fact that we are now, active in Baltimore. We have a flagship customer in Baltimore, MedStar, is a really phenomenal customer of ours. We're hoping to grow our customer footprint also, of course, in the whole Chesapeake area. We're just thrilled to be back in Baltimore. I mean, I can't wait for the pandemic to dissipate, so that I can go and see some of the things that we built out there.
No, it's been very exciting here. I mean, there's a lot to do here. There's certainly, from my work, I'm seeing a lot of digital health opportunities in the Mid-Atlantic and the Chesapeake region. So definitely Baltimore is a great epicenter for that. Well, we really appreciate your time today. And thanks so much again on behalf of Betamore, Johns Hopkins, CDHX, and all our sponsors. And we will have a great day, and have a great day yourself. Thanks.
Thanks, Mark. That was great. I
Bye.
appreciate that. Thank you.